Let me, at this point, try to bring my dogs into the picture. Like, one interesting thing about dogs is that you can just stare into their eyes for a long period of time lovingly. And the reason that's interesting is because it's actually very hard to do with a person. I mean, there's a famous saying in anthropology that if you see two people staring directly at each other for more than 5 seconds, that means they're either going to have a fight or make love. It just doesn't persist, right? Something is about to change. But with a dog, you can look directly at a being that you really love, and the being will look back directly at you. Yes. And every once in a while, I get this weird feeling, although my basic impulse is the basic way I think about the world is very mechanistic and kind of reductionist. Sometimes it's like so intense that I think, what if the love is more fundamental? What if the subjective connection is like a kind of a magnetism that is like drawing, right? Which seems crazy to me the rest of the time, because like I said, I'm pretty reductionistic, but it's my way of asking how much of your thinking about this and your skepticism about the reductionism, how reductionism can be applied to consciousness and subjective experience. How much of this, if any, has to do not just with the way things feel, like it feels hot, it feels cold, but the way encountering other people feels, right? The relationship of your consciousness to the consciousness of other people. Does that figure into your...
Oh, yes. I mean, I think that relationships with others have definitely shaped my views about what I think science can and can't do. And one of the big relationships that shaped my views of everything, really, is the fact that I'm an identical twin. And, I mean, I think my sister and I are an interesting case study for science. We have the same genes. Until we were 17, we'd never spent more than 36 hours apart. We slept in the same room together all through our childhood. Often we slept in the same bed. So we couldn't have had a more... We have the same physiological makeup, and we had exactly the same psychological conditions, apparently, when we were growing up. But yet we are fundamentally different people as adults. So different that I actually think she's the most alien person I know.
Really?
And
You mean in terms of intellectual interests or also in terms of personality?
In terms of both. I mean, she is so wildly different from me, it's hard for me to comprehend that. And I think one way of thinking about this is it is like a psychological version of the butterfly effect. You know, the butterfly effect in chaos theory, a butterfly
flapping its wings in South America can lead to a hurricane in North America 2 months later.
Yes. So, you know, in complex systems, things that start very close together inevitably get radically apart and different. And I believe the human psyche is like that. I mean, if two people like Christine and I, who have so much in common, can end up so different, that suggests to me that actually whatever fundamental laws might be discovered about human nature, that within those laws that the possibility for radical difference way outweighs whatever the commonalities are.
Okay. Let me ask you one question, and then I will try to come up with a reductionist theory. I'll throw a reductionist theory about your relations with Christine at you and see how you handle it. But would you say, has there been less conflict between you two than you think there is typically between siblings? Less strife, more altruism?
No, I would say that being an identical twin is the hardest relationship of my life. Sometimes I say to people, it's being like married from the moment of conception with no concept of divorce. So, you know, and like a good marriage, I mean, there's no such thing as a marriage that people don't have to work on. And twindom is in some ways a pathological relationship. It's amazing in some ways. It's also very difficult in other ways. And you have to really, really work on it. There have been times in Chrissy and my life where we've just had huge differences, and on both sides we've worked incredibly hard to understand the other person's. And we come from a family, there are 6 kids in my family. We were a good Catholic family, so I know what it's like to have relationships with other siblings. And I think the thing is, just being a twin, you do feel just almost existentially committed to making it work, whatever the differences are. So you do have to spend really serious time on understanding one another.
Here's a question I don't expect you to answer, but would you be more inclined to run into a burning building to save your twin sister than, I'll tell you why I'm asking later, but after this, but would you be more inclined to run into a burning building to save your twin sister than your other siblings?
Yes, I think I can say that, yes, because she feels she's a part of me. She is an alien being, but she's a part of me.
Okay, here's my attempt to reductionistically explain everything about your relationship. I mean, first of all, your feeling more altruistic to her is consistent with so-called kin theory, which argues that the closer the degree of genetic relationship, in theory, the more altruism could evolve. I mean, she is a clone of you. In Darwinian terms, saving her is like saving yourself. Now, it doesn't follow that natural selection would necessarily pick up on that fact and build into the human mind particular altruism. That would depend on like how common has identical twindom been, and a lot of questions. But that could actually be a biological adaptation, that when people perceive their identical twins, they become more altruistic than they usually would be towards siblings. That's a possible explanation. On the issue of how different you are, there is a whole theory, I think, of child development that sees children adapting to other siblings as part of their ecosystem in a sense, and there can be a displacement effect. Although I've usually seen this explained in terms of like older and younger siblings. So like if I come along and my brother is already the athletic star and he's getting the commendation for that, and my dad loves him for that, and then it's been posited that there's a tendency for the younger sibling to find something, their comparative advantage. Well, they can be the good kid and get praised for that, or they can be the studious kid. So there is it has been argued that siblings can kind of displace each other personality-wise in a certain sense, and that would be in a way itself adaptive and governed by a psychological adaptation. But I suspect I have not shaken you from your view that you're...
Yes, I know that theory. I understand that theory, and one can easily find examples among one's friends and siblings where things like that are going on. I think twindom is, particularly being an identical twin, is a very unique kind of a relationship, and the reason is that when you're growing up and you look very alike, people can't tell you apart, and so you get. People just say, "Oh, you did blah blah yesterday, Margaret," and you think, "No, I didn't. Christine did it," and you quickly learn to actually, as it were, have a split personality. I think the fantasy a lot of people have with being an identical twin is, "Oh, isn't that cool? There's someone else who gets to live the same life as you." Actually, to Chrissy and I, the great thing about being identical twins is we do feel we've got to live 2 lives, 2 completely different lives. So here's for instance, when we left school, I went to university and studied physics and mathematics. She went to art school and initially became a painter, and now teaches in one of the big arts colleges in America. So, I feel through her, I've had a life in arts as well as my own life in science, and she feels through me, she's had a life in science as well as the life she's had in the arts. I wouldn't have had that opportunity had I not been an identical twin, but I do really feel I've been privileged to lead 2 lives. But that's one of the reasons it comes back to, it's not easy. It's hard. It's time-consuming to lead 2 lives, and you have to understand something about why the other person's life is so different from yours. So I don't think that is necessary, that quality of actually... It is like entanglement. I do think of Chrissy and I as like two entangled psychologies, like two entangled particles. It doesn't matter where in the world we are, and for 20 years we lived in different countries, that our lives are entangled like two quantum particles.
But you don't mean that actually there's a magical kind of instantaneous influence exerted as with the two particles? Or maybe you do. Wouldn't well, defy the laws of physics given the fact of entanglement, I guess.
It is true that strange things happen on that sense, Strange things do happen, which one can try to come up with all sorts of explanations for them. But yes, there does seem to be, as it were, psychic connections across vast distances.
Okay. Well,
not that I'm going to argue that should be necessarily explained through quantum theory.